This week, we welcome back Thor from Rotoworld and Case from the Las Vegas Sun to preview the AFC and NFC Championships. Let's do this.
We are previewing the AFC NFC Championship games with Thor from Rotoworld and Case from the Las Vegas Sun. I'm Chris, your host. If you have watched these guys' pro interviews, you will know we are joined by the two most responsible people for Kansas football in the Orange Bowl, right here, live, coming to you. So, guys, thanks for coming in. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a lot of fun. Appreciate your time.
Good to be here.
And all right, so let's kick it off. Little tail of the tape here. We'll start with the AFC Championship game. What catches your eye there as far as spread, total? What are you looking at?
Well, as far as the AFC one goes, it's the Mahomes status. I mean, for both. So, I mean, that's sort of an obvious thing to say, but that's, what everyone's keeping their eye on. And that's what's depressing the Chiefs line right now. It's also depressing the over-under. And when these lines first came out, they were depressed even lower. Both the Chiefs side and the totals come up a little bit, but those were both way lower than the look-ahead lines, on both, just because of the questions about Mahomes' status. But it's hard to imagine that Pat Mahomes would be withheld from that game, almost regardless of his status. So, I mean, getting the Chiefs -3 at home at this point seems like a bit of a steal, is my take.
Yeah.
This is a tough one for me, especially, I mean, the Mahomes thing obviously is the first thing you're going to throw in. There's a lot of uncertainty there, even though we all think he's going to play. But I think you really look at this matchup and it's like, who are these two teams? I think there's a lot more unknowns than there are typically in an AFC Championship game. Now, Buffalo, I mean, you go back to the beginning of the year, or let's even go back last year. I mean, totally carried by their defense, one of the best defense in the NFL. Come into this year, defense is terrible, and somehow, I mean, Brian Daboll's looking like goes from the hot seat to the best offensive coordinator in the league. Just looks like a god. He'd be the guy I'd be looking to hire if I was hiring a new head coach right now. They're carried by their offense. Now we get to the playoffs, it's kind of flipped. I mean, these last two games I've been so unimpressed with Buffalo's offense. Just a couple different things. 14-point swing on that pick six against Baltimore. Even Indianapolis, they didn't look all that impressive. Now it's kind of the defense that's carrying them. So, I mean, Buffalo, I don't know. That's kind of – I've been off on this team all year, and I'm still having a tough time putting my head around them. And even Kansas City, I mean, I think we all give them the benefit of the doubt because of what they did last year, and they have, quite possibly who's going to go down as the best guy to ever play this game, and Patrick Mahomes. But I think if you cover all that up and you just look at the Chiefs' statistical profile this year, I mean, they really look like a team that is extremely lucky to have only lost one game. That they're pulling out all these games just, week after week. It's almost like an anomaly. They've been able to win these many games. I know it's the whole Kansas City thing and Patrick Mahomes. You have to kind of throw that out. But they've been kind of a weird team, too. They haven't been as dominant as I would have expected. So I think both these teams, and then you throw in his injury, I think there's just a really wide there's a whole lot of ways this game can go. I think there's a lot less that would surprise me than in a typical championship game.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things we were talking about on our team was like we wrote an article called like how do you quantify a life, which was super dramatic. But what we were talking about is like if a player can't play, what that does to a line. And you typically see maybe 6 points. It'll probably be more with Mahomes, but if that were to happen and riots out in the street in Kansas City, but the line then flips and you now have Josh Allen -4 or so against Chad Henne. And that's a pretty favorable line. So I think this might be a rare occurrence where you either jump on it early on Kansas City's side or wait and take the Bills if there's that off chance that they get in. But just to be clear, Case, you're looking at Brian Daboll instead of Jim Harbaugh for a head coaching job.
Yeah, maybe I'm too swayed by this year, and I know it's been a lot different since he moved up to the booth and got a different look at things. But I mean, I was among the many people who thought very little of Josh Allen, and a lot of points this year, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now,
Yeah.
I'm trying not to overreact to the last two games where they barely averaged 4 yards per play against the Ravens. And I mean, that just really flipped on a couple plays, but I've been so impressed. And I think a lot of it, I guess I'm still a Josh Allen hater a little bit because I think Dable and Diggs have a whole lot to do with what's happened.
Yeah. Thor, what matchup are you looking at here? Is it because, like, if you think back to the Baltimore Buffalo game, their defensive front gave Baltimore fits, and Baltimore's offensive line isn't great, but it shouldn't have gotten manhandled the way that it did. Is that the matchup, or what are you looking at for this game?
Agreed. Yeah, and that's one of the primary ones. Buffalo during the regular season had one of the NFL's lowest pressure rates. They have gotten a little bit better defensively as the season's gone on, but I think they were 25th or 27th, something like that in pressure rate. And we saw them in the first two rounds of the playoffs sending extra heat, at times in the form of blitzers. And what's going to be interesting in this game is if Pat Mahomes plays and he's 90%, 85% or better, if the Bills try to do that to get extra heat on him, maybe under the auspices of the idea that maybe Pat Mahomes' ticker is working a bit slow because he's coming off of a concussion. It's tough to talk about stuff like that, but that's just what the truth of it is. They might be sending extra pressure to try to get, closer to a league average or an above average rush on him. But the issue is that then you got to leave Tyreek and Kelsey in single coverage, and you leave yourself susceptible to those chunk plays that the Chiefs feast on. Obviously, if Chad Henne plays, that's not a thing. Chad Henne is going to struggle with whatever sort of pass rush the Bills can put at him, and he's not going to be able to put his playmakers in space quite as often. One of the other Bills defensive issues that that led to their defense lagging, particularly in the beginning of the season, was missed tackles, particularly in the second level, et cetera. And so that's really big. If the Chiefs can get their playmakers in space, they're going to win this game. If they can get them the ball, to their playmakers in space, they're going to win the game. Obviously that's why I'm saying the Chiefs, because my supposition is that we're going to see Pat Mahomes, and that Pat Mahomes is going to be 85% or better. If Chad Henne starts, I'll take the Bills. Almost up to Bills -4 or whatever. Like I don't. Yeah. Because the whole thing changes then, right? And then, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't playing, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire had an awesome game against the Bills in the regular season, if he's out again, and then say Damian Williams is starting again, you have a backfield of Henne and Damian Williams. Well, some of these issues that the Bills defense has had, they're not going to be as pronounced or be as exacerbated in a matchup against that backfield as they will be against Pat Mahomes, because Pat Mahomes is obviously going to be able to make you pay 40+ yards downfield, with some of these different things. Again, if you have to send extra pressure, which the Bills do, to get a viable pass rush. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great call. I do think that Kansas City offensive line, it doesn't have to be as good as maybe the league average is, because Mahomes makes you pay when he moves around in the pocket and gets outside of the pocket, specifically to his right. And we see that with Josh Allen too. I mean, the arm talent for Mahomes and arm strength for Allen are pretty incredible. Case, is there anything aside from that up front, the pressure, that you're looking at in this matchup?
I think you guys really hit on a big one. I think you do have to look back to the first game. I mean, the Bills basically dared them to run, and they did. They just ran it down their throats. I guess, the question is if they're going to be able to do that again. I'd say one thing probably has a lot more to do with the total and how I'm looking at it is I have seen, I typically don't like betting totals till later in the week when we can get a full idea of the weather, but I have seen, there's going to be up to 30 or 40 mile per hour wind gusts right now in the forecast, which is a big indicator towards the under. So I think that's kind of an external factor you have to look out for, and how that's going to affect these passing games. I'd say that's one other matchup to not gloss over.
Weather's interesting. It seems like all roads lead to a home field advantage. Like you have Green Bay on the other side of the card, and then Arrowhead. Green Bay weather, Arrowhead typically noise. With the capacity at what it's going to be at Arrowhead, it's still loud, but there's no way it's anywhere close to the same home field advantage. And I know that's something you guys we've talked about a little bit. Is that something that you think is getting baked into this line specifically or not?
Well, it's weird, about the home field. It seems like with these stadiums that have less people, and maybe you guys have your own thoughts on this, but just anecdotally from me, watching it or whatever, like it seems like in some of the games, it's not really, it doesn't really matter that much. And then it seems like in some games, it actually manifests to that degree, or maybe even a little bit more. And, a recent example of this is the Bills game last week, where that stadium seemed almost as loud as it normally is. And it seemed damn near haunting, with 6,500 people going ape shit, the entire game and sort of making up, like one person was making the noise of 10. It was like, this sort of marauding band of Vikings in there that was just sort of beating their chests the entire game, like, in the buffalo biting cold or whatever. And you talk about Justin Tucker, he's like the best kicker of all time, and he bangs the goalpost twice. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the weather was a part of that, but like, I'm not sure how to quantify, home field advantage in terms of performance, with a kicker and stuff like that. But like the Bills definitely had a home field advantage last week. The announcers mentioned it several times. The players mentioned it several times. So it's, it's a tough thing. Is that about capacity? Is it about the city? I'm not sure. But in some situations, I do think that it manifests. Case is mentioning, sort of the weather in this situation. And Kansas City is known to have raucous fans. Are they raucous to the degree of the Buffalo Bills fans, which have been, blue-balled for a Super Bowl appearance since 1993 and have never won one, much like, folks in my state, the Minnesota and the Vikings? Probably not. That's why Chiefs fans are, pile driving themselves through white tables in the parking lot or whatever. But, even so, it's going to be very loud there, and, we'll see how that manifests.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things, I think you're exactly right. Like at a stadium that holds 70,000 people, you're really only getting maybe on a third down, like 30,000 of those people really screaming their heart out when it's full, right? And so that difference is not that much different than like 6,500 or so. They're having that effect because in a typical stadium, you're not getting all 70,000 people screaming. I'd love to, but you're just not. And I think you're exactly right. They have the ability to level up to that. Case, what do you got?
Yeah. I think anecdotally, I agree with you guys. It seemed like it affected the Ravens last week. And I can't say I went to Buffalo this year, but I did go to the Raiders game at Arrowhead. And by far of all the stadiums I went to this year, it was the loudest, even though there were only 16,000 fans, I think, at the time. I don't know if they were pumping in more noise. Most of these stadiums didn't pump in noise at all. It was only on the broadcast, which was kind of interesting. But all that being said, and the anecdotally thing, I still just, I go back to quantifying it. I think there's too much home field maybe baked into both of these lines. We've seen all year home field has meant absolutely nothing. Away teams won more games in the regular season, and it's been this way over a wide array of sports, other sports that are allowing some fans. And I just really think that home field is extremely minimal now. There's so many variables in this game that maybe it's not a big factor, and we're going to get to the NFC game. I guess spoiler, I think Lambeau is being given too much edge for home field, and would not be shocked if Arrowhead is as well. Maybe I'm making a folly and a mistake after we saw the one game sample last week where it clearly mattered in Buffalo, but home field is not something that really factors into my numbers or the way I'm going to play these games at all.
Cool. All right, before we flip over to the NFC, what are we missing? What's the thing that we should be thinking about that we're not talking about? Anything? Did we nail it? Andy Reid, most comfortable guy in a visor I've ever seen in my life.
I would say just tread lightly on the Chiefs. I know a lot of people are going to be betting the Chiefs. I was really surprised that the number dipped down to 2.5 for a while today. I guess maybe there was some trepidation about Mahomes actually coming back. I do think that was too low, but I think if you're betting the Chiefs, I would want to lay -2.5. I don't want to lay any more than that. I make the fair number on this 3.5, 4. And if Mahomes isn't 100%, and I totally think he's playing, but I'm more worried about the foot than the concussion. I don't think he's going to be 100%. I think a half point, even a key half point at like 3.5 or 4, I still think that's reasonable. I think this number is about in the right place it would be. I'm sitting on, I kind of anchored my whole future portfolio on Kansas City, a rogue number at the start of the year. So I'm going to be betting Buffalo almost for sure. At some point, I'm hoping to wait till it gets back to 3.5 or 4. I'm not necessarily telling anyone to join me, and I think there's a huge edge on the Bills. I just think this number is about where it should be right now. And I think you're going to probably see it, if anything, move a little bit more in Kansas City's direction.
Cool. Yeah, that works. So, all right. So let's flip over to the NFC now. And we just talked about home field advantage. Let's talk about that for a second, because there is a prevailing thought that Green Bay does have probably one of the few home field advantages, just because it's January in Green Bay. And it's going to be in the teens, and it's probably not the same effect on Tom Brady, who's played in Foxborough for 20 years, as it was for Jared Goff, who's a California kid. But do you guys see, I know, Case, you're saying it's a little overhyped there, or a little overweight as far as the home field advantage. Thor, what do you think? Is that accurate, or is it a little too much, or what do you think?
I think analytically Case's point is well taken in general. I think, like, if you were just to pick one game out of 100 out of a hat, you would take that advice and not bake it in, but again, going back to our other thing, the example of the Baltimore game last week, there are going to be games where it does seem to play a major role. Like, if Tucker makes both of those field goals, who knows, maybe that game goes a different way. Right. And now we're talking about a different matchup right now. So, but yeah, I mean, in general, like, Lambeau, as far as a home field, I don't think it's going to matter a ton in this game. You mentioned that Brady, all the games he played in Foxborough and Gronkowski, and they have a veteran coaching staff, et cetera. Their rookie safety, Winfield, comes from Minnesota. Their rookie offensive tackle comes from Iowa. I don't think those guys are going to be, they do play in Tampa Bay, but it's not like, as a body of human beings that they've never played in the cold. Most of them came from the cold. So I don't think that, that's going to be, I don't think the weather is going to play any sort of a factor, in that game.
Cool. You sound like Bane there. Like, oh, you cold is your ally.
I got to pull a little deeper for that one. Oh. Yeah.
I actually too, like I said, it's later in the week sometimes where I start to factor in more of the weather stuff and double check. And maybe I'm off on this, but I think what I had seen went a little bit against what you were saying. I thought the forecast was right around freezing and not very windy in Green Bay, which I think makes the weather even less of a factor to me. I agree with Thor basically on all that he was saying. I think we get these warm weather teams thing is really just like kind of a convenient narrative that we can grab onto sometimes. But, maybe there is something there if it's, -5 wind chill and it's, windy and these offenses different. Just from what I've seen so far, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah. And you're exactly right in that there's a very big difference between, -5 or 0 degrees and 32 with a chance of snow, unless you're somebody who's from South Florida and has never seen snow or cold like that. If Lamar was headed to Arrowhead, I think, he got a decent taste of cold, and he's gotten a decent taste of cold, but there are certain players that you see them on the sidelines, like the gigantic jacket, like maybe 4 of them on top of him on the bench. And it's just like, you can tell that guy's not comfortable at all. But yeah, I agree with you there. I do think Lambeau, it's kind of interesting. This, I think, is Aaron Rodgers' first time starting, because he was on the bench when Favre had the NFC Championship in Lambeau. I don't think he's had one at home. Is that correct?
That might be. I know he's lost his last 3, but I was kind of laughing because that was the Tom Coughlin face game, wasn't it? Where his face is melting off.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anything like that.
Yeah. I've talked about this before a little bit, but similar to when Tom Brady was in New England, Green Bay, there's something about that place that it's like one of those storybook places, and like you're going in to play Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the best to do it. I'd like to take this moment to put a flag in the ground. People using the term GOAT in like a plural sense is driving me crazy, because it's greatest. It cannot be more than one by definition. So just like to put that out there. But I don't know where you guys stand on that. So
Fair.
That's funny. It really bothered me for a long time. I was like, man, we overuse this term so much. And I feel like it's one of those things that just becomes so much cliche. It's just like, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm sure I've probably misused it at some time now, but you're absolutely right on the surface. I agree.
Anyway, so I and maybe this is like the football kid in me, but like, it seems like when teams go up there to Green Bay to play Aaron Rodgers, or to New England when Tom was there, it seems like they force themselves out of their game plan because they think they need to do more than their game plan is in order to beat Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers at their home turf. Do you guys see that at all, or is that just me fantasizing what that is?
Well, sometimes, yeah, I mean, but sometimes it's, it's game script related as well, and typically, Brady and Rodgers have been on these dominant teams, and, particularly at home, they're, it's, they jump out to, it was kind of like with Alabama, we talked about this on, I think when, I was on like earlier or whatever, but like, Bama's always, they always had the double digit lead by midway through the first quarter, and, teams that, the entire season they had a specific game script, or they had, a specific idea of like, this is who we are or whatever. All of them would all abandon it in the middle of the first quarter. And it wasn't necessarily because like, oh, we're intimidated by Nick Saban or Alabama, or it wasn't, for any of these reasons. It was this is the only way we can win this game, or at least that's what they felt, right? Like, so like, for instance, with Florida, they completely had to abandon their run game. Ohio State had some injuries, to Sermon and stuff like that, but they look different, against Alabama. So I do think, your point's well taken, that a lot of these teams do not look the same, as they typically do. But I think, just, sort of the dominance of the teams themselves goes into that. It's why you see really good teams. Often it correlates with having a good run defense, just in terms of your counting stats, not necessarily your efficiency stats, because your opponent's typically going to run less, just because, you always have those double digit leads in the second half.
Yeah. I think a combination, I guess, of what you guys are saying is really hitting home with me. I don't know if I've given it away yet, if you can ascertain, but I think there's a pretty big edge on this game, or at least there was, maybe not at the current number, but I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that Tampa was as high as +4.5. I couldn't get on them till +4, and I got some +175 on the money line. There's no metric, there's no thing that says in the world that Green Bay has been that much better than Tampa Bay. I mean, I guess their win-loss record, which is misleading and not very predictive. So I think there's an edge on Tampa Bay in this game, but I'm very worried about one thing, and I think it kind of is a factor that you guys have both mentioned kind of indirectly, and that's the coaching. I think that Matt LaFleur has kind of taken the next step, and I think he's been just phenomenal this year. I know Rodgers is getting a lot of the credit, as he should. He's been great too, but I think Green Bay is just a team that, last year they struggled a little bit with their aggressiveness. They made some bad decisions. I think their scripts at the beginning of the games have just been flawless this year. I think they really haven't made a lot of tactical mistakes. Then you go to the other side, and maybe it's the coaching staff that gets drawn out, trying to play with Rodgers, playing catch-ups. I feel like Tampa's just a bumbling mess. I mean, they should be even better than they are with, what they do. It seems like Brady's kind of having to pull him out every game. I have very little faith in Bruce Arians at this point of his career, and Byron Leftwich. And I hate to have a big position with the team that I think is poorly coached, but of the 4 teams left, Tampa is the one team where I'm just like, I have so little faith in kind of the decisions they're going to make during the game. And maybe that's a factor of, going against Rodgers. And if they fall down 14-0, they're going to, get away from what they're best on, or make some tactical mistakes. And I think that's been a constant with Tampa Bay all year, and it's been very frustrating. And I'm kind of scared to see how that goes in this game.
Yeah. Is there a floor or a ceiling to that Tampa Bay line that you would flip on?
Well, look, I mean, I know a lot of people are just going to want action this weekend, so I know everyone's going to be betting the game. I still at 3, if you're just betting to one action, I still would take Tampa Bay. I don't think I'd go lower than that, though.
Yeah.
You know, what I'm really hoping, Green Bay has been just an amazing team in out of the gates this year. I mean, they've been like historically great in capturing leads. I'm hoping there's a little more noise than signal to that. I'm really hoping kind of Tampa Bay gets out to a lead, and maybe I can look on maybe playing back some of my liability on Green Bay Live, just because we've seen Aaron Rodgers play from behind before too, and I think, like I said, they don't make any mistakes. I don't think they're going to make any blunders also if they're behind. So maybe it's a game you sit out and try to get involved live with. I think whichever team falls behind, maybe there's going to be some. I don't think it's always this way, but I don't mind backing either of these teams if they fall behind. So maybe if you just want the action, maybe see how the early game goes, hope someone goes up 14-0 and then jump in with a 7.5 or higher.
Cool. How about you, Thor? Where are you leaning?
I like Tampa Bay as well. I think it's a good matchup for them. We saw what happened in the regular season. I don't expect it to be a domination to that degree, but I think that Tampa Bay, if you were to have been in, with the Green Bay team last, on Sunday, like watching this game, I'm pretty sure that they would have been rooting for New Orleans. I think they match up a little bit better with New Orleans than they do Tampa Bay. I don't think they wanted to play Tampa Bay. I don't think that this is a great matchup for them. And so I agree with Case. I thought, any line that's above 3.5 is ludicrous. But even to 3, I like Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is going to win the game. So I'll have money on the money line as well. I just like the matchup for them. Like I said, I think they're going to be able to shut down Green Bay's running game pretty easily, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Rodgers and his one target, and then sort of his secondary one. And I think this is going to be one of those games where you're watching it live, and there's going to be another Twitter thing where you've seen this in like 5 Packer game this year, but where you go on Twitter and Jordan Love is trending because people are going ape shit that the Gudikins or whatever his name is that he picked the Jordan Love over T. Higgins and Chase Claypool and Michael Pittman, which remains hilarious. And not just picked him over he traded a 4th round pick where he could have taken L'Jarius Sneed went 2 picks after this 4th round pick that he used to trade up. L'Jarius Sneed goes 2 picks later, and L'Jarius Sneed was an all rookie, first teamer this year and is now on the other side of the bracket here. So, I mean, they basically traded T. Higgins and L'Jarius Sneed for Jordan Love. I mean, if this Packer team had those 2 players, you think they might have a little bit better a shot to win the Super Bowl this year. So I think you're going to see a lot of those takes on Twitter this weekend. And I just think, again, like Rodgers is such a great player, but Tampa Bay's got the number 1 run defense in the league. And we saw what happened in the first game. I mean, Green Bay, they have that stable of running backs, but none of them's like, a stud. They all sort of do their own, little thing, but none of them's like sort of a transcendent talent or anything. And they can be shut down. And again, we saw what happened in the last time when it happened. Then all the pressure goes on Rodgers. Tampa Bay can just pin their ears back and get after people. And Tampa Bay has super athletic linebackers. You just zip around the field, zip, 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 zip. And when they know the ball's only going to go to 1 dude or, 2 dudes, Tanyan, and sometimes we're going to check it down to Aaron Jones. Like when you take away the run game of Green Bay, as good as Rodgers is, that just becomes an extremely one-dimensional offense. And, Tampa Bay exposed them last time. Again, I don't expect it to go to that degree this time, but the same path exists to victory, whether or not it's that big or not. But I just think it's just the obvious, sort of path. And I like Tampa Bay to win.
Got it. Cool. All right. So we got Tampa Bay, both of you on this side, and potentially some money line here. In the AFC, just to put a bow on it, who are we taking?
I'm going Chiefs, and I didn't know we got Case the weatherman in here. I didn't know that stuff about the wind, so I'm going to go the under 2 now. If there's if there's 15-degree weather, you got to be thinking about 15-degree winds. You got to be thinking about the under. That's where statistically it starts mattering. If it's over 20, folks, get your money in on the under. So thanks for that, Case. I'll be on the under as well.
I lean the under too. I would say keep looking for updates from that. I mean, as you know, from living in Canada, I feel like they say this about everywhere, but the weather can change so quickly. So if those wind gusts go down, I'm not super excited about getting in the under. I think this game went off on 55 in the regular season. We're at like 53.5 right now. I think this is going up though, and I would be more interested in the Bills when it goes up. Like I said, I'm going to be doing it for personal reasons, no matter what. But I would probably be on the Bills and the under. And I want to say, can I get one more, draft hot take / hopeful Twitter meltdown? I will cede to everything Thor about the draft. I'm no guru. I don't know anything. I know very little, scouting wise. But I thought a terrible pick was when the Chiefs took Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I want to see if the Bills are running out this game by just controlling it on the ground and picking up on their defense. I thought if the Chiefs needed to improve anywhere, shouldn't they have taken a defensive guy? So instead of making Jordan Love trend, can we make it trend that this is a terrible wasted first round pick?
That's a great point. No, it's I mean, hell, especially if Edwards-Helaire doesn't play. But I mean, the Chiefs are probably going to get a free pass on that one. But that's a tremendous point because they probably, but the Messiah, Patrick Mahomes, they called him, before the pick. Patrick, who should we take? Who should we take? Clyde.
I'm sure I'm sure he had defense lined up when that call happened.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, they had to submit the name with. I mean, even though Clyde was probably going to be a mid-second round. I mean, we don't talk about this as much, but he was probably going to be a mid to late second round pick if the Chiefs hadn't done that. But it was like, he's such a perfect fit with the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes said his name. So, but I agree with Case in terms of value. That was not a good pick.
I'm so vindicated. I was really worried about sharing that one because, like I said, Thor knows a lot more about these prospects wise than me. But I've been having a running, argument with a Chiefs friend of mine all year that I felt like they wasted that pick and it was bad. And I mean, who knows? It could be one of the things that bites them this weekend.
Yep.
All right. Fair. So we're gonna look for those picks. We're also gonna look for those Twitter flares over the course of the game. So. All right. Any parting words before we sign off here? Any last words of wisdom? Anything else before we cut it out?
Rock chalk.
Rock chalk. And personally, I'd love to see a Buccaneers-Chiefs Super Bowl. I know I said I'm betting the Bills, and I am a little bit for kind of hedging purposes, but I think Chiefs-Bucks would just be a tremendous Super Bowl, and I'm rooting for that above all else, certainly.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's that. Guys, thank you for spending some time with us. We'll check in with you throughout the week. And this was awesome. So we will talk to you soon. Thanks.
Leave a comment below if you have any questions that you'd like to hear us ask some of the best sharps in the business in future interviews. And if you like irreverent commentary, be sure to sign up on SharpRank.com for our newsletter that will show up in your inbox on Tuesday mornings. Also be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and if you're feeling professional, LinkedIn. We'll see you around.